Hi everybody, Lawyer Autumn Witt-Boyd here with this week's installment of our Facebook Live series and the Legal Roadmap podcast. I'm glad to be here with you. It is summer. So if you are like me, your kids may be out of school, you may be taking it a little easier because it's summer break, or you may be gearing up for a busy time in your business. Could go either way. Today we are going to be diving in either way. This should be helpful. This is another episode in our series for course creators. So I'm going to be talking about if you in your course use guest experts or collaborators, how you might want to deal with those legally to make sure that you are protected, that you have all the rights to everything that you need, that everybody knows what they are doing and feels like they are treated fairly from the very beginning. So I'm going to dive in. Let's see. I'm looking at my Post-it note. I have, 8 things. It's kind of maybe a long one today. I have 8 things that I want you to think about when you're working with guest experts in your course. So we will dive into that in just a second. This is episode 93 going live on July 1st. So I'm actually recording it a little bit early, but if you're listening to it live, happy 4th of July week. If you are in the US, maybe you're traveling or taking it easy this week. If you have not already been listening to the Legal Roadmap podcast and are looking, maybe you have a road trip or you've got some downtime, this is a great time to go back. All of season 4 is really focused for course creators. So both our interviews are with either course creators or companies that serve course creators. And all of my solo episodes are on topics that are really geared specifically towards course creators. So if you've got some time on your hands and you're wanting to do a little bit of learning, this is a great time to go back to the beginning of season 4 and listen through. My goal really with this season is to teach a course creator pretty much everything that you need to know legally and equip you with the knowledge to either put protections in place yourself or work with a lawyer and have a vocabulary and have kind of a basic understanding of what you need so that you can get your course legally protected. So diving in, talking about working with either subject matter experts or guest teachers in your course. So there's a couple different ways this might look. I've talked about before, I work with Amy Porterfield in her course, Digital Course Academy, that she just launched recently. She has several guest experts who actually teach not entire modules of her course, but pieces of her course. So for example, Rick Mulready, who's a Facebook ads expert, comes in and teaches the sessions on how to put together Facebook ads. And it's not just a short piece of her course, it's a pretty big chunk of her course. He goes into a lot of detail in how to set up Facebook ads. So that's one way that you might be working with a guest expert in your course. They may actually on their own record a piece of your course or provide materials that you use in your course. So that's one way. Another way that I often see my clients using guests in their course or collaborators is actually bringing someone in maybe to do a live Q&A. And I actually, as a legal expert, do this quite a bit with my clients and other people in the online industry. It could either be that I'm putting together a short presentation, sometimes I do that, or oftentimes they will just gather questions in advance or we'll just take questions live and it's just answering whatever is on people's minds. So those are 2 ways that you might be working with guest experts in your course. So often it's someone with subject matter expertise that maybe you don't have. Another way that I've seen this, my client Shanna Skidmore, who has the Blueprint model, she's done this in the past where she actually had not really subject matter experts, but she had particular types of entrepreneurs who were almost like case studies. And so, for example, she works with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, so she might have a version of the Blueprint model that was just for painters. And so she used one of her former customers who is a painter and kind of applied her course to that person and used them as basically an example of how you could use it if you were a painter. Or she might have had another one for a graphic designer or a floral shop owner, floral designer. So that's another way that you might be using guest experts or collaborators, where you're kind of using someone as a case study. So it's not that they're coming in and teaching for you, but you are using them in your course as an example or kind of working through the system with them. The other way that you might be working with a guest expert or a collaborator in your course is if you do have a true collaboration where you are creating a course with someone else. So maybe you each have strengths and you come together and you each teach bits and pieces of the course, but you're really working together on the whole thing. So it's not that you own the course and they're just stepping in for one piece of it, but where it truly is a collaboration. So in any of those examples, if any of those apply to you, or if you've thought about doing any of those scenarios in your own business, congratulations. This episode is going to be very helpful for you and will help you think through some of the things, how you want to structure your collaboration or working with these guest experts. So standard disclaimer, I am a lawyer. I am not your lawyer. Just because you're listening to this, I'm licensed in Tennessee. Everything I'm talking about today is going to be pretty much based on state law. There will be a little bit of federal, which is the same in all 50 states, copyright and trademark concepts discussed. But if you have questions, this is information only. So if you need specific legal advice for your scenario, please talk with a lawyer, whether that's me or someone else. Make sure you get the answers you need for your business. All right, so let's dig in. My number one tip, if you don't listen to anything else, if you stop here, that's okay with me, is just put this in writing. So no matter which scenario that I talked about at the outset applies to you and your course, please put your agreement with the people who are contributing content to your course in writing. This could be as simple as an email outlining what you're going to do. If it's anything, if money is changing hands, I would suggest that you do something more formal than an email. Even if it's just a simple Word document that you put together, or if you're in person, if you sit down, I always have a notepad. If you just sit down with your legal pad, mine is pink, sit down with your legal pad and scratch out, some bullet points and you both sign it. Just putting it in writing forces you, first of all, to talk about all of these things. And second of all, it gives everyone something to refer back to later if there are questions. And we all hope that this goes very well and that there aren't any disagreements or questions later. But I, as a lawyer, have been on the back end of a lot of these deals when things have gone wrong, when there has been a misunderstanding. And I will tell you, feelings can be very hurt. It can really mess up a launch schedule if you have someone coming back and saying, that's not what I agreed to, or you've used my content in a way that I didn't expect. And when you're talking about intellectual property, there can be lawsuits threatened. It is, people treat their content as their baby, and rightfully so. We put a lot of time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears into developing our content and our brand. So we want to make sure that it's being used the right way. So put it in writing. That is my number one tip. Again, it can be informal. Email can be a contract if it's clear that everybody agreed. If you're having to go through 10 pages of an email train or an email chain to figure out who agreed to what, and it's a lot of back and forth and negotiating, that's not great. Put yourself in Judge Judy's shoes. If you have to take someone to court and you have to hand over, this is the document showing what we agreed to. Is it clear? Is it easy to tell? Yes, we agreed to all of these things. If it's just 4 bullet points and then a response that says, yep, that sounds good to me, that's very clear. But if there is a lot of back and forth, that may be something you want to put in a little more formal document. Now, you do not have to have a lawyer for these kinds of agreements. This is certainly something you can do for yourself if you're just starting out. But if you have gotten to the point where your courses are making money, where your business is profitable, it is time to invest in a lawyer, because these are situations that can get really sticky really easily. So a lot of my clients will work with me to put together kind of a standard template. So it's not the templates that I sell in my online contract store, but it's kind of a custom template that they then use in their business with every collaboration. Kind of sets the ground rules, and then they might customize it a little bit depending on what everyone's doing in any particular collaboration or for each particular guest expert. But that is nice because at least they know they have consistent terms, and they've got the same ground rules for everybody that they're working with, and they know they have a solid foundation that they're starting from. So I think that is a great investment if you are using a lot of guest experts in your courses. If you're having a lot of people, come do guest Q&As, it's a great investment that you can use over and over and over. And it's not like you're spending a ton of money on something you're just going to use for one small thing. All right, my number 2 tip. The first thing I want you to think about when you are putting together your agreement, or when you're sitting down and talking about how the relationship is going to play out, is who's doing what. So typically in a course, we've got several different kinds of assets that we're including we've got videos, we've maybe got PowerPoints, we've got collateral materials like workbooks, worksheets, maybe you've even got Excel spreadsheets or things that help people work through applying the concepts. There may also be in-person parts of your course. There may be Zoom calls or coaching calls or Facebook Lives. There can be all kinds of different parts and pieces. So I want you to think through all those parts and pieces and figure out who's doing what. Now, in the first scenario I mentioned where you've got someone coming in and teaching something that they are an expert about, they are probably going to be doing almost everything. They're going to be putting together their own script. They're probably going to be doing their own PowerPoint, unless you want to provide them with a branded PowerPoint so that it will look like the rest of your course. That's up to you. You want to make really clear, what are you expecting? Are you expecting them to do their own, or are you going to provide some resources? Do they just have to send you an outline and you will make it beautiful, put it into a PowerPoint? Who's recording the videos? Do you have a production team that's coming in and doing all the videos and so they'll be part of that? Or is this something you're expecting them to do on their own and provide to you? Are you expecting them to have worksheets or resources, other things that go with their content? Again, all of these things are really up to you, how you want this to all be put together, but you want to talk about it. You want to make sure everyone's expectations are on the same page from the beginning so that there are no misunderstandings later. All right, number 3, who gets paid what? So this is the fun part. We're going to make some money from our course. There's all kinds of different ways that I have seen this work, and I've put together lots of different agreements for my clients. So here are a couple scenarios you might want to think about. You could just make your guest expert an affiliate. So maybe they are helping you promote the course because they're in it, and so they just earn a commission on whatever they sell. So that's one way. You might even make them kind of a super affiliate because they are contributing something to the course. So maybe they get a slightly higher percentage or a nicer payout than your regular affiliates. So that's one way. You could just pay them an hourly fee for their time. You could pay them a project fee. So you could say, for your contribution to this course, I'm going to pay you $5,000 or $50 or $50,000. It could be widely different. So you could just, pay them a flat fee. Think about when you're going to pay them that fee if you do it this way. Are you going to pay them in advance, or are you going to give yourself a little time to actually make some money off the course? Again, you could pay in installments. There's lots of different ways that you could handle this, but we want to talk about it from the front end. We want everybody on the same page so there's no misunderstandings later. I also want you to think about, is this person going to be a contractor, a partner, an employee? What is the type of relationship that you are expecting to have with this person? Are you bossing them around? Are you just hiring them to provide something to you? Or are they really going to be a partner? If, like that last scenario I talked about where you really are collaborating on this project, it is more like a partnership. But I want you to be careful in using the word partner, or sometimes people use the word joint venture in the online world, and I really don't like when people use that word because usually they don't really mean joint venture. That has a very specific legal meaning, and most people are not using it in that way. So I want you to be careful if you're using those legal sounding words like partner, which has a legal definition under state law, and it may mean something that you don't really want. With most of these types of collaborations, unless it is a true partnership, you're probably looking at an independent contractor type relationship where you're hiring them to provide you with a particular service or a particular product, and you're paying them a fee for that, whether that's through a commission or through a flat payment or an hourly payment. But you really are not wanting them to be an employee. You don't need them to go on your payroll. You don't need to be paying their taxes and doing all of those things. So again, this is something I want you to think about and just put it in writing so that everyone knows on the front end, what is our relationship? What are we expecting? Another way that you could look at payment for this collaboration or this contribution to your course is sometimes if you have a very large audience and your course is very successful, you may actually ask your guest experts to pay you because they are getting exposure and a lot of new eyeballs on their stuff. And sometimes that opportunity can allow them to make strides in their business that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So it may be where you're not paying them for the content, but they are actually paying you for the opportunity to get in front of your audience. So lots of different ways this could work. I want you to talk about it. I want you to think about it and make sure that everyone is happy with how that's going to work out on the front end. And honestly, I guess the one other tip I would add here before I move on is simpler is always better. I sometimes see these really complicated payment schedules, with percentages changing based on different variables. And that's fine if you have a very well-established business making a lot of money. But if you're still pretty new at this, I would say simpler is always better. If there are questions later, you want it to be simple to figure out how to pay each other. All right, so number 4, with any course, as you know, there are going to be expenses. So who is paying the expenses to actually produce, market, and sell and host this course? Typically, if you are hiring someone just to be a guest expert or come in and do a Q&A or contribute just a little bit to your course, they're not going to be expected to pay any expenses. But again, you want to talk about that if that's not true. And certainly you want to make it clear whether they're authorized to spend money on things, whether you will reimburse them. So let's say you have a really high production value in your course, and so you do want them to use a professional videographer rather than just using their laptop like I am right now and doing a screen flow over their PowerPoint. If you're expecting them to have, some high value in the content that they're contributing to you, and there's going to be a cost associated with that, it's a good idea to say, who's going to bear that cost? Are you offering to bear that cost, or are you expecting them to bear that cost? And again, this is another one where misunderstandings can happen later. So we just want to be really clear on the front end, talking about all the different costs that are going to be involved. If it is a true collaboration where you are working together on the project, then it might be more fair to think about, okay, I'm going to pay for the domain hosting and the course website, like the course platform, like a Teachable, Thinkific, Kajabi, and you're going to pay for the graphic design and the video production costs. And you can kind of map out a budget and split it that way. That at that point, I definitely want you putting this in pretty detail in writing, because we want to make sure it's fair. We want to make sure, again, that everyone knows what they're getting into, so there are no surprises later. So who is bearing any expenses involved with putting the course together and production? Number 5, what are the marketing responsibilities of each side? So frequently we will see that guest experts will help promote the course. If that's your expectation, that's great. This is another thing that I want you to talk about, and I want you to, be very clear. And if you do have specific milestones that you're expecting, or specific deliverables that you're expecting your guest experts to do, like I expect you to do 5 Facebook Lives during my launch period, or I expect you to send 6 emails to your list, or whatever else it could be, 7 Instagram posts. Whatever kind of schedule you have or marketing plan you have, and you're trying to fit the guest expert in, and they have specific things that they're expected to do. Again, I'm going to be like a broken record. You want to talk about it with them. You want to make sure they're okay with it. And you want to be sure everyone is on the same page. And that goes for you too, especially I would say if they are contributing to your course and not being paid a project or a flat or hourly fee, but they're maybe only being paid a commission or a percentage of revenues, they may expect you to do a certain amount of marketing to make sure that their contributed time and energy is worth it. So to make sure that the course is successful, that you are doing the marketing activities that will make the course a success. So there's all kinds of, I'm not a marketing expert, so there's a million different things you can do marketing wise. So sky's the limit, but just think about that. And if you do, like I said, if you do have a marketing plan where you have really specific expectations of your guest expert or your contributors or your collaborators to do specific things, you want to put that in the contract so they know it and they can plan for it, and hopefully they can do a great job of it. Number 6 to think about is termination. So this is usually at the end of the contract, and I feel like by the time we get there, when we're reading a contract, we're often tired and we're kind of over it, but this is a really important provision. So at the beginning of every business relationship, I encourage you to think about what would happen if it falls apart. And that can be for a good reason or a bad reason. It could be that you win the lottery and so you don't need to work anymore and you shut down the course, or it could be you have a health issue and you have to close your business, or, for financial reasons, you need to go find a job doing something else. There can be all kinds of different scenarios. So what happens in that case? What happens to the course? Does it just kind of die? Is there an opportunity for the collaborator, especially if you do have more of a partnership type arrangement? Could they take it over and keep selling it? If it's just a guest expert doing, a small part of one module of your course, you probably aren't going to want to look at that. But think about if the course is no more, what happens? Think about also if you have a falling out with the collaborator or with the guest expert, maybe you want to take their piece out of the course. Maybe, they do something that you don't like or that really tarnishes their reputation, and you don't want that reflecting badly on you. And so you want to maybe either take them out of the course altogether or switch it out for someone else. You want to have, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. You want to have the ability, if it's your course and they're just a small piece of it, you probably are going to want to maintain, the right to make changes, the right to use it or not use it. You probably also are going to want to be able to edit it. If, let's say you're putting together a course about Facebook ads and Facebook changes the interface. And so now, what the piece that they did maybe doesn't fit anymore, or maybe you just need to change out a few screenshots and it'll still work. You want to talk about that, can I edit your stuff, or am I expected to use it verbatim? I was involved in one scenario involving a lot of guest contributors. It was not an online course, but it was a digital product. And there were some misunderstandings about how much the contributed content was going to be edited, how much it was going to be changed. And frankly, some of the contributing people were very unhappy with the finished product, and they didn't feel like it reflected on them well. And so again, you want to talk about that in the beginning. Are you allowed to edit? Are you allowed to do a light edit? Are you allowed to, just kind of use what they've given you as a starting point and make a lot of changes? Again, you can avoid a lot of hurt feelings if you just say, hey, I am expecting that you're going to give me kind of a rough piece of work and then I'm going to polish it and make it into a beautiful diamond. Or if, you're going to give me the thing and I'm going to use it as is. Again, a lot of hurt feelings and misunderstandings and disputes come from we had different understandings at the beginning and we just never really got clear on how things were going to work. And so we want to avoid that by talking about these things up front, making sure that everyone's on the same page. And if someone is not okay with what you are wanting to do, you can say that at the front end and maybe we all walk away. And sometimes the best deal is a deal that never happens, because you can avoid all of the expense and heartbreak of a dispute by just saying, okay, well, we just don't agree. We're not on the same page here. Let's not do this collaboration, or I'm not a good fit to be a guest expert in your course. So thinking through termination, thinking through what rights you need is on the front end. Very, very important. So that was number 6. I kind of blended over into my number 7, which is intellectual property. So I want you to think about who owns what in the content that is being contributed. Again, if it is a true collaboration, maybe you have co-ownership of the product. So again, if one of you wants to do something different, maybe the other one can keep it going, or maybe you could each, market it separately. There's lots of different ways this could work. If it's a guest expert who's contributing a part of your course, maybe they want to, keep ownership of that piece. Maybe it's something they teach all the time, so they don't want to give you ownership of it, but you want to make it really clear that you have permission to use it. And is that only for a year? Is it for 5 years? Is it for the life of the course? We want to talk about this. We want to make sure, just like with the right to edit, the right to make changes, that's another thing I want definitely to be spelled out in writing. What are the rights? Who can do what? If you don't own it, then making it really clear that you have permission to use it is really important. Something else to think about: what if your guest expert wanted to go make their own course that is, the same content that they were teaching in your course? Is that okay, or is it not okay? What if they want to go do a presentation at a conference that's pretty much exactly what's in your course? Is that okay? Is it not okay? And I think you need to think about it when we're thinking through these different ideas. There may be a cost associated with asking for some of these things. So if you are saying, I want you to create this piece of content for my course, you're doing it for me, and you can't use it anywhere else, that may cost you more than if you say, oh, I know, Autumn, you teach about trademarks all the time. Can you come do a session in my course on trademarks? But of course, you're going to talk about trademarks in all kinds of other places. Whereas if you asked me, Autumn, I want you to come and do a really custom part of my course on trademarks for online course creators, and I don't want you talking about that at all in any other, not on your podcast, not at a conference, not in a presentation. That to me is going to be a really high value ask. I'm going to ask you to pay me a lot of money for that, because you're kind of cutting the legs under me, out from under me, from being able to do other things in my business that I would normally be able to do. So think about this as you're, negotiating and what you're asking for. There may be a cost associated with this, and think about whether you really need that. Like, is it really going to hurt your course if I'm speaking at Social Media Marketing World on the same topic? My guess is probably not, but something to think through. And then the last thing I want you to think about, number 8, and this kind of, again, piggybacks on the intellectual property concepts that we've been talking about, is do you need a non-compete or an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, as part of your agreement with your guest experts or your collaborators? Again, if it's a guest expert who's just coming in, they're a subject matter expert, they're coming in, maybe you teach about selling on Etsy, and you have someone who has a really successful knitting shop, and so she's coming in and kind of doing, showing you how her knitting products are particularly great. That probably you're not going to need a non-compete for that, because there's not really a lot of competition. They're different subjects, and they're just coming in and kind of teaching on one really specific thing. Now, if you are a more general social media strategist and you're bringing in maybe a competitor who you're friends with to teach about one particular thing that they do, then maybe you do want a non-compete. Maybe you do want to say you're not going to do a course on this exact same topic. Anytime you're dealing with non-compete provisions, you're going to get into some tricky state law issues, because there are lots of rules and regulations around these. So if that is important to you, I highly recommend that you speak with an attorney who can research your state's laws and make sure that you are doing it the right way, because you can really kind of stick your foot in it if you are not careful when you're doing a non-compete. But for some of my clients, it is really important. They don't want the guest experts who are in their course to be competing with them, and that's fair. Again, it should be negotiated. It should be something that you talk about. It should not be something that's just hidden in the fine print of your contract that you're never talking about. And definitely something that you want to be careful about and research. Make sure that you are doing the right way. With a non-disclosure agreement, that is more, I would say some course creators are actually inviting their guest experts kind of into their fold, showing them the inside workings of their business, especially if you're sharing your entire marketing plan with your guest expert because they're helping you promote the course, or if they're getting access to all of your materials and the way you run your business and things that are not otherwise public that your students don't have access to, and be very difficult for your competitors to find out. If they're kind of getting access to your secret sauce, then I would encourage you to think about whether you want to include a non-disclosure provision. That just means that they agree that they're going to hold that stuff confidential, that they're not going to use it, and they're certainly not going to take it to someone else and tell them, like to one of your competitors. So think about whether you are pulling back the curtain on your business a little bit and giving them a special peek into your secret sauce. If that is the case, I would encourage you to think about a non-disclosure agreement as part of your collaborator or guest expert agreement. Again, if it's just someone contributing a little piece of your course, you're probably not going to need it, but something I wanted to kind of put a bug in your ear for you to think about. All right, that was a lot. That was 8 things that you might want to consider if you are using guest experts, collaborators, contributors, people doing Q&A with your group, with your students in your online course. So I hope that was helpful. And I'm going to reiterate, if you listen to nothing else, if you only remember one thing, it's definitely you want to put this stuff in writing, even if it is just on your pretty pink legal pad and you're just writing it down and signing it with bullet points. Please, please, please put this in writing. These relationships can get really tricky if you are not careful. All right, next week, this was episode, as I said, 93. If you want to look at show notes, those are all going to be on my website, awbfirm.com/podcast, and the number 93. Next week, we are going to have an interview, and this is with Dr. Lindsay Padilla. She teaches people how to put together courses. She has a background, obviously, in education, former college professor, tenured college professor. And she has a really unique way that she teaches her students how to build their courses in a way that will actually allow their customers to finish them and to achieve massive results, and to do that really quickly. So I think you are going to love the conversation that I had with Lindsay. She is a rock star in the online course world, so you are not going to want to miss that episode. So tune in next week, and I will see you then. And again, if you're in the United States and it's 4th of July week, hope you are having a nice holiday.